Hey guys, my name is Lucas and welcome back to my studio. In this tutorial we will take a look on how you can make your very own piano drop, something like For Better Day by Avicii. This tutorial will be made within FL Studio, but you can use whatever music program out there you like. You can apply these tips to any of them. But why don't we just get started and jump straight into FL Studio. Okay guys, so here we are in FL Studio. But let's just talk about what is a piano drop. A piano drop would typically be a drop that is driven by a very strong piano within the genre of progressive house or electronic pop or something like that. It can be one piano, but it can also be a couple of layered pianos. The piano drop will normally not contain a lot of different elements because the piano itself contains a lot of frequencies and takes up a lot of space in the mix. And this is also why you will see a lot of piano drops only with maybe a piano, a bass, a kick drum as the three key elements, and then you maybe have some snare or claps and then maybe a hi-hat. And when it gets real crazy, maybe someone is singing above all of these. But before this video, I made a little piano drop myself, so I had something to show you guys to make sure I had a piano groove that I really liked, because the importance of this drop is really the piano groove. If you can get the groove right, you will normally always have something to work with. Even the bass can come from the groove, the kick drum will come from the groove, and so on. But let me just try to play for you what I came up with, and then we will talk about how to make that into a piano drop. So here we have my MIDI keyboard. And the way that I usually find my piano chords and grooves and melodies would typically be by playing it out on the piano instead of dragging it into a MIDI file, because I think that makes it more humanized. So my piano groove goes something like this. It's very simple, but it has this kind of distinguished, dirty, sexy piano sound, which I really like. And then I recorded it into FL Studio into this piano right here. And I also quantized the piano so it fits to the grid. And one thing to notice is all of these velocities down here. Every single note has its own velocity, which is very important to make it kind of human-like. Because if you just made every single velocity of these notes the same, it would sound so static and not as dynamic as you might want it to. So what I also did was, if I zoom in a bit, we have This would be the right hand playing the piano, and this would be the left hand. I took something from the right hand and moved it slightly right, because then we also get the feeling of not hitting all the notes at the same time, because no piano player in this world hits all the note at the same time. This also goes together with the left piano, or so the left-handed piano. We also have a slightly difference in time for some of the notes, which gives it this kind of movement and dynamics as well. So for this particular piano, I used the addictive keys from XLN Audio, and I edited the volume so the piano hits hard and then quickly drops to a lower level, so we get this kind of hitting feeling like a dance piano normally would have. And I also gave it a very short release time. But other than that, I really didn't do too much. I left the EQ where it was, both for the close rip and for the ambient tube, but also for the master. I actually didn't do a lot of stuff in this particular part of the plugin. So for the mixing, I started by making some EQing. And yes, this seems like a mess, but that's how I EQ my pianos. So I want my piano to be huge, and I don't want to lose a lot of the piano, but I also know that I need a bass later, one of the three key elements. So what I did was that I applied a high pass filter to it, around 130 Hz. to kind of get rid of the very low end. And what I also did was to make a mid-side EQ, which means that when I take out more low end on the sides than I do on the mid, I also remove some of these phase issues that you might have with the low end. And then for these two, they are just like, you know, harsh frequencies that I removed. What I also did was I went into Maximus. So normally Maximus would be some sort of mastering plugin, but I used this as a stereo controller where all of the low frequencies was merged somewhat into mono, the mid frequencies also a tiny bit, and I just left the high frequencies where they were. And for the master, all of the frequencies, I kind of took them a bit apart to make the piano wider. And finally, I also made one final EQ to take out the last frequencies, because when you make stereo enhancements or decreasements like this, you will get some new frequency areas to work with. But overall, this piano sounds like this. So what I did afterwards was that I made this bass right here. And it also has this kind of distinguished pumping progressive house vibe to it, and it's totally in mono. I don't want it anywhere else. That will just mess up the piano, because as we also talked about earlier in the video, the piano takes up a lot of frequencies and a lot of space in the mix, and we don't want the bass to interfere with it. So the bass is a bass from Nexus called, I think, Dark Roll Bass 1. I took off the delay and reverb. I don't want that in that bass. And together with the first piano, it sounds like this. And if you don't have a great pair of headphones or a great speaker, you might not even hear the bass. It's kind of underneath the keys, which you will also hear, for instance, if you take a look at the song For a Better Day by Avicii, you will also you will hear the bass, but it's very much below the piano, because the piano kind of drives the drop forwards. That's the important thing. And for the bass, I made some EQ, basic EQ, and also I just made sure that everything was in mono. And then we have the kick drum, and together with the bass and the piano, the kick drum sounds like this. And for the kick drum, I made some more EQ that I maybe normally would, but that was because I didn't like the actual sound of the kick, but I kind of liked how it hit. But normally the kick sounds like this, and I made it sound like this. So I kind of made it more open and more soft, because in this area we have a lot of piano going on, so I removed a lot of the space, but then I could enhance some of the other. We also have a clap and a hi-hat with some EQ and some reverb to it. Let me just play that so far. So when I came to this point of the drop, I was like, okay, the drop is missing something. We have the dynamics, we also have the key elements, and we also have some claps, and we have some hi-hats. So that was really great so far. But what I did then was I thought, okay, how do we get some movement to this song? So I took this grandeur piano from the Contact library. It sounds like this. And yes, you only hear it in the left right now, because I also made some in the right, which sounds like this. And the reason why I put a piano in the right and the left was to enhance the right hand and the left hand of the piano. Because, as I also mentioned earlier, this represents the right hand of the piano, so I copied that part into a right, and then I played in the right side. And the same goes with the left. I copied the left part of the piano and pasted it into the left. And together that sounds like this. And when you play that together with the main piano, you get some sort of movement, feeling that you have the piano in the middle, but you also have something going on in the sides. And for the final processing of all the pianos, you know, I routed all of these to this piano bus channel. I had some EQing going on. Again, it's some cutting EQ. I also had a transient master on. The end release of the piano, I felt it was too long, so I cut the sustain just a bit. What I also did was I compressed the piano. You know, you don't have a dance piano without a compression, so I did that. And I also added some reverb with the plugin Realm from Native Instruments. And by the way, this is my favorite reverb plugin. I really like this. And all in all, it sounds like this. Yeah, this is how I would make a piano drop. And again, the key elements are the piano, the bass, and the kick drum. You don't want too much other stuff, because the piano is so important that if you take up a lot of space from other elements, it would just destroy it. And you also don't want to cut the piano too much, because then the piano loses its energy. And you know, you need the energy from the piano if it's the driving force in the drop. So yeah, guys, there you have it. That's how I would make a piano drop. I hope you liked this video a lot. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. I will be making more videos like this in the future. And other than that, I'll see you. Goodbye.